Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Patrick Bohan, and Patrick is running for Congress in Colorado, and we're going to talk about the migrant crisis. So, Patrick, in your district, what's the migrant crisis like?
Well, I think the interesting thing is, I think uh, you don't see a lot of information being published on it, and I
Mhm.
think that's kind of on purpose. The only information that I've seen about the impact to Colorado in general has been by a group called um, let me see if I get this right, the Common Sense Institute. They're a conservative think tank, and they estimate that there's probably about 50,000 migrants just living in Denver alone, and probably that many living in other parts of the state.
Mhm.
My district goes to just outside of Denver. So it contains a lot of rural aspects and a lot of and the urban part right outside of Denver. Um, but they estimate that right now that the cost to the state is, or for just Denver alone, is probably about 100 million. But that doesn't include education. That doesn't include healthcare.
Mhm.
One hospital has claimed that it's cost them, I think it's Denver Health, has cost them 10 to 15 million dollars. Uh, there are 34,000 migrant students enrolled in Denver schools, costing us another 50 million. So I
Mhm.
would estimate that the cost is probably around 400 to 500 million dollars for the entire state. And
Mhm.
as far as crime is considered, there actually has been a national story told about crime here recently in this area, and it's not in my district. It's right outside of Denver. It's a city called Aurora, Colorado, and they highlighted uh, that Venezuelan gangs have taken over apartment complexes in Aurora, and there's videos of very heavily armed individuals walking down halls, and what they're doing is they're demanding rent from people that live there. They're threatening their life if they tell the police. And the governor and most politicians are saying there's nothing to be seen here. But I've seen enough news articles that really suggest that I do believe that it's actually happening.
So, your governor is Polish, right?
Yes, it's Polis.
Uh-huh. Do you think he's effective?
No, I don't. The weird thing about it is I'm a libertarian, and he claimed himself to be a libertarian, and he moved to be a Democrat because he knew that he couldn't win without being tied to at least a Republican or a Democrat on the ticket. And he does not rule like a libertarian should. So no, I I don't trust him. I think he's handled some things a little bit better than some other Democratic governors, but that's not really saying a whole heck of a lot.
Mm. So I was in contact with him a number of years ago, and at that point he was a Democrat.
Yeah, yeah. So this is his second term. So I don't know how long he's been a Democrat. I know he started out as a libertarian, but most libertarians say that no, he's not even close to being a libertarian anymore. I think libertarianism, most libertarians are more conservative minded, like myself, and not so much liberal minded.
But when I was in contact with him, it was in, I would say, 2008,
Oh, okay.
and he was, I think he was running at that time for Congress, and he was a registered Democrat at that point.
Okay. So
Hmm.
he's been a Democrat for a while, but I do know that he did start as a libertarian. I don't know when he switched.
Okay. Okay, so what's the migrant crisis? You gave an overview of the incident, but overall, what's the migrant crisis like in your district or your state? Because you are a sanctuary state.
Yeah, so no, I think I gave the economic impact, and I was talking about how it's um the impact is uh as far as crime, that I think a lot of it's being covered up. I don't know if we'll ever know how much migration affects crime. I've given those kinds of details. What I would say is that I don't know specifically in my district. I live in a rural part of the state.
Mhm.
There is information that there's already been migrants bust into our area. There is information that some of the places around here, businesses, are employing a lot of illegal migrants, and they claim that they can't find um, citizens to handle those jobs, and I don't know if that's true or not. I think the impact is gonna. I think in time we will see, but I'm really skeptical that a lot of the information will be published.
So when you go around campaigning, do the people that you talk to, do they voice their concern about the migrant crisis?
Yeah, they do. Most of them are most people are really concerned right now about the economy because most people are having a difficult time making ends meet with inflation and high taxes, and so I think that's probably their chief concern. But people do voice concern about migration in this state. Like I said, I probably don't witness it as much in this area as they would probably in Denver and in the urban areas. But um, I we everybody knows it's happening, and everybody wants to make sure that one of the top policies is definitely securing the border,
Mhm.
making sure that we put in a border wall, put in hire more border agents, put in technological surveillance of the border, and not just the southern border, but to do it to the northern border as well, because a lot of people don't realize at this time, but there are a lot of people coming across the northern border now. It's nothing like the southern border, but we certainly don't want it to get like that.
Mm.
And the crisis is going to continue as long as we're going to have open borders and we're going to provide people that come in here benefits. They're going to continue to come across the border. The problem is not going to go away.
So do you think the solution to the problem is more law enforcement to make sure that the borders are secure and people don't come into the country?
Yeah, one of the only reasons why we consent to government in the first place is for protection and safety of our rights. The only thing we want the government to do is to protect national and individual sovereignty here at home, first and foremost. That's their first objective. So, yeah, we definitely need more border security. Even people that talk about defunding the police, I think it's crazy. There may be reform needed in some cases to better train people, but I don't think we should be defunding police because that's the chief objective of government is to protect us, is to make sure that our rights are secure. That's the sole purpose of government. Unfortunately, they're involved in all these other things, and they are not just trying to take care of us first and foremost.
Now, there's a number of states that are classified as sanctuary states, and the other states that besides Colorado that are designated sanctuary states. Is there a big push in those other states for defunding the police?
Yeah, I think what you're going to find is most of the sanctuary states are pretty blue states, pretty liberal states. And so they also believe in not only defunding the police, but defunding ICE. I had a questionnaire on one, I forget who it was, but they asked, it was, multiple choice, and they asked about defunding ICE, and that was, if not the most popular answer, it was the second most popular answer.
Mm,
So yeah, it's a definite problem.
mm-hmm. So, what made you decide to run for Congress?
Well, I just finally came to the realization that um, that the biggest threat to our country isn't necessarily from some foreign enemy. It's actually from our own politicians who just refuse to uphold their oath to protect and serve the Constitution. I, I just think that uh, we're making government a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I think uh, I just it's like our constitution isn't changing because of things that Russia and China are doing. It's changing because of things that our politicians are doing. They're the ones that are violating our First Amendment rights. They're the ones that are trying to take away our guns. They're the ones that are taking away our property rights. So that's why I'm running. I think uh, I've studied constitutional law. I'm not a lawyer, but I just finally came to the realization that our politicians really aren't upholding what they're supposed to be doing. They're making the government out to be a lot more complicated than it needs to be. They just need to be this neutral arbiter of the law, and that's not what they're doing. They love to pick winners and losers based on how we look and think. You see that with DEI legislation. They love to pick winners and losers based on what type of product we make. You see that in climate change legislation. So that's why I'm running.
Mhm. So, are you enjoying the ride?
It's been interesting. It's been uh that's what a lot of my neighbors tell me. Just say, just have fun with it. Don't let all the other stuff get you down. But it's hard. It's you know the incumbent in my district has over $2 million. I've raised a couple thousand, and so I'm out, you know, being outspent by over 500 to 1 by the incumbent. I'm not too sure where the Republican is on money. And so I'm very restricted in what I can do, and I'm very limited. And so I know it's an uphill battle, but I think the only way to change things and to give people more choices is to just take a chance and run. But yeah, I'm trying to enjoy it more, but a lot of it is very unfavorable. I mean, 2 days after, and this was last year, 2 days after I got my EIN to set up my accounts for running, I got a threatening letter from the IRS saying, "Why haven't I filed my taxes for the first half of the year?" And that still hasn't even been resolved to this day. They're still hassling me over when I created the EIN. It was like third or fourth quarter of last year, and they were saying I didn't submit anything for the first half of the year. And I'm just like, well, I just started this, and they still haven't resolved it. So it seems like it's not really set up for very small campaigns. It's not set up for people that don't have a lot of money. And it seems like if you go in there and you talk about that you want to get rid of the IRS and put in a national sales tax and replace the IRS, um, it seems, I don't know, it just seems kind of fishy to me that they start giving me a hard time right from the get-go. So I don't know. So it's been interesting.
So, Would you say that the migrant crisis is in the top 5 of issues that people should be thinking about?
Oh yeah, sure. I think besides the economy, yeah, I would say it would have to be at least second or third.
Okay.
Um, and the other thing I like to point out is it's really not legal from a constitutional standpoint. A lot of people don't talk about the constitutional aspect of it, but there's one thing where the Biden administration is suing the state of Texas over their handling of the border. And generally, what happens, the Supreme Court generally sides with the federal government in those kinds of cases because the supremacy clause says that the federal law is the supreme law of the land. But it's only the supreme law of the land if they're pursuing some kind of constitutional objective. And they're not pursuing a constant open borders is not a constitutional objective. What Texas is doing, trying to secure the border and protect national and individual sovereignty, that is a um, a constitutional objective. And there's also another aspect of it that the Constitution makes this distinction between persons and citizens. And persons are anybody that lives in this country. It could be citizens, migrants. And if you read the 14th Amendment, it protects due process clause protects persons. So everybody's provided due process of the law, regardless of who they, just because someone's a migrant here, it doesn't give me the right to steal from them. It doesn't give me the right to assault them. It doesn't give me the right to murder them, and vice versa. They can't do the same to me. But the 14th Amendment also makes this distinction about citizens, and they're provided privileges and immunities. And what that means is that citizens have certain privileges and benefits and rights that can be denied to migrants. Things like political rights have routinely been denied, and for good reason. We don't want people coming into this country that don't speak the language, that don't understand our law system, that don't understand American history, sitting on juries, voting, or holding public office, right? I mean, it just makes sense that certain rights are denied until they reach citizenship. And that's the same with benefits. I think this distinction between citizens and persons says that we should be taking care of citizens before migrants. So if migrants come in here and we're repurposing tax dollars to fund them, and we're taking that away from citizens, or we're spending more, the government spending, doing more deficit spending, or if they're spending more by increasing our taxes, that's a violation of our rights. They should be taking care of us first and foremost, and not migrants. And I think that's why there's that distinction in there.
But if a migrant is coming here because of situations in their country that made it so unlivable and they came here, they're seeking asylum in this country, right?
That's true. That's what they're doing.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, I think it's really getting out of hand. What do you think?
Oh yeah, it's out of hand. So, if you think about it from an economic standpoint, our economy grows at maybe 2 to 3 million jobs per year, and that's enough to keep up with natural population growth and legal immigration. It's not enough to keep up with 3 to 4 million migrants coming across the border. So
Mm-hmm.
no matter how well the intentions are of migrants, and whatever good reason they may have of coming here, we can have empathy for them because some of them have been mistreated in their own countries. But no matter how well their intentions are, they're going to be a burden on American society. Even if they want to become citizens, even if they want to live the American dream. Uh, you know, even if they want that, there's a high probability that they're not going to get a job and they're going to be a burden on society instead of helping society. And so, yeah, you could feel sorry for people coming here because I realize when I was born in this country, I won the lottery. Everybody that's born in this country has won the lottery. They just don't realize it.
Mhm.
But we are lucky to have been born here, and that's why people are trying to come here. And as bad as things have gotten here, I still realize that we are lucky to be Americans, and that's why people are trying to come here. And I understand that, and I would do anything to increase legal immigration for people that want to be here, that want to assimilate, that want to learn our laws, that want to live the American dream. I'm willing to increase that, but there's no way that we can increase it by 3 to 4 million jobs or uh, citizens per year. It's unsustainable.
That's, you use the word unsustainable. What if the borders are not closed? What if they continue to be open? That's a recipe for chaos and disaster.
Yeah, it sure is. Uh, from an economic standpoint, everybody's trying to uh, now come to the realization of the cost of living after having a couple of years of high inflation. And so people are struggling to put food on their own tables right now to feed their own families. But if you're going to have more and more migrants come across the border, uh, what's going to happen? The government's going to have to spend more, do more deficit spending. And all that does is it leads to a higher cost of living. It leads to higher taxes. It leads to higher inflation. And so you can't spend your way out of inflation. But if people just keep coming here, you're we're going to have to keep trying to spend our way out of inflation. And you just can't do that. You just can't do that. And so it's just going to lead to a higher cost of living, and things are just going to get worse. It's just going to snowball, just like you're saying. It's
So,
unsustainable.
so when you go talk to the people in your district, what do they tell you?
Well, it depends. Most of the people are are concerned about, like I said, the cost of living right now and putting food on the table. There are people that are concerned about migrants. One of the persons that was concerned about migrants was actually another libertarian, and she asked me about this because the Libertarian Party itself um, came out with a message, and I was surprised to read this. It came out with a message saying that they support open borders, and I'd have to say I'm at odds with my party over it because it doesn't make sense. It can only make sense if we were in some kind of utopia setting where we didn't have welfare. But because we have welfare, and libertarians are against welfare. They're against bigger government. They're against deficit spending. They're against higher taxes. But since we don't live in this perfect world, if more and more people come across the border, it's going to lead to economic calamity, right? It's going to lead to more deficit spending and higher taxes. So it's the antithesis of, I think, of what libertarians really want. So she was one person that brought up the border issue, and she had the same viewpoint that I had. That was kind of surprised that libertarians came out with this message saying that they support open borders. And I think their presidential candidate and other candidates support it, but it doesn't really make any sense. I think it's in conflict with their economic ideas.
So ultimately, nobody's got a crystal ball and nobody can say what's going to happen in November. If this problem is not resolved What do you think the consequences are going to be?
Well, the consequences are yeah, I mean, if it's not resolved and Harris gets into office, well, we know that the problem's probably just gonna persist because she was the so-called border czar
Mhm.
under Biden, and we saw that nothing happened there. Now she's kind of flip-flopped on things, and it's quite remarkable how when election time comes around, liberals start to move towards the center to try to get more independent voters, and and then once the election's over, then they move back to where they're you know legislating from the from the far left. And so I think that I don't know what the consequences are, but I would say that if it continues to happen, you could expect high inflation to persist. I think you can persist, or you can expect higher taxes to persist. And I don't know what it's going to mean in terms of crime, because the thing that I find alarming about the crime that's going on in Aurora of these Venezuelan gangs taking over these apartment complexes is if we just try to cover it up, it's just going to expand. It's going to go to other areas if they get away with it. And I find it very disturbing that the state of Colorado wants to eliminate gun rights for its citizens, but it's doing nothing about disarming illegal migrants who are taking over apartment complexes. So I don't know what's going to happen, but you know, it's not going to end well. That's all I can say.
So, how's your campaign going?
It's going okay. I mean, as a third party, it's an uphill battle. I realize that. Um, and I was just trying to change a few minds and perceptions and down. I used to be a conservative. I used to vote pretty much conservative all the time, and then they became big spenders with government. They started looking more to the government for solutions. I trust the people. I want to put more money in the people's pockets and not in the government's pockets. And I believe in individual freedom and free markets. And I just think that conservatives started moving further away from that. I think that was their message at one time. Heck, even protecting the rights. Libertarianism is actually classical liberalism, because they originally liberalism was about protecting the rights of citizens equally. But what liberalism it turned into social liberalism, right? And it turned into socialism and more of welfare state. And so I feel like both parties kind of diverged. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just trying to change some minds and perceptions about how I think we're losing our country. And I don't know. I mean, if I could change a few people and get some younger people instead of older folks like me, like that are 60, and maybe I could train them and hopefully help someone else down the road run, because I've got a lot of lessons learned from what I've done.
Hmm. So, if somebody wants to learn more about you or even volunteer for your campaign, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, so you just go to patrickbohan.com. It's just my name .com. That's my website. On Facebook, um uh my handle's Patrick Bohan for Congress,
O-
and on Twitter it's Patrick Bohan and the number 4.
Okay. Okay. So, Patrick, it was great talking with you. You've been listening to Patrick Bohan, who's running for Congress in the state of Colorado. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. And if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks. Thanks for being on my show, and thank everybody for listening. Have a great day.